Good morning, and welcome to the Alameda Connection on KCSM HD2. I'm your host, Scott Piehler. Every week on the Alameda Connection, we'll introduce you to a person, place, or thing that makes a trip to Alameda worth your while from anywhere in the Bay Area and beyond. There's so much to do, see, eat, and drink in Alameda. It's my pleasure to be your guide. Today, we're going to talk about pinball, one of my favorite activities as a kid, and to be honest, to this day. And if you're headed to Alameda, you want to make time to stop in at the Pacific Pinball Museum on Webster Street. This isn't a museum full of dry exhibits you can't touch. No, this is a play-all-you-can journey through decades of Americana. My guest is Evan Phillippe, the museum's executive director. We're going to talk fun, we're going to talk history, we're going to talk science, and we're going to talk about the all-ages appeal of Alameda's Pacific Pinball Museum. Well, first of all, Evan, welcome to the Alameda Connection. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Really happy to be here.
So, let's talk just a little bit for anybody who's unfamiliar. The Pacific Pinball Museum. What do you do there? Why would someone go to the Pacific Pinball Museum?
Sure, that's a great question. I'm the executive director of the Pacific Pinball Museum. We're a nonprofit here in Alameda, and we're excited. We're in our 23rd year, and we are a real nonprofit museum. We're a board managed by a board of directors nonprofit with a really specific mission of educating through learning and play. And we're located on Webster Street. And when we say we're a museum, we're not a static museum. We're a playable museum. So aside from 10 or 12 historic games that are just a little too fragile for the public to play, even though they do work, they're in great condition, we want to preserve them. Those are the only static games that we have. The other 103 games in that museum are free play. They're playable, and you can play them as museum pieces, ranging from 1947 with Humpty Dumpty, which is the first game ever made with flippers, up to the 2020s in modern games like Elton John.
I've been there many times. Full disclosure to the audience, I've been into pinball since I was a kid. I was the 1993 Atlanta Division B champion back when I lived on the East Coast. So as soon as I got out here, just gravitated right to Pacific Pinball. So founded in 2002. Can you walk us through the beginning of that?
Absolutely. We've got a fun beginning. It gets referred to often as our punk rock beginning. So where we're currently located on Webster is two suites that run through to the very back of the building. We have 6 total rooms, and we have all these beautiful murals and exhibits running throughout. But we started in the very back room of the building we're in. People would come in through the back parking lot on Friday nights, and they would pay to play pinball by bringing beer or chips. We had a single jukebox. We had about 10 or 12 games. And it's really our founder, Michael Schiess. He founded the museum by bringing this little personal collection out to people in this little back room just on Friday nights to kind of share pinball with the world. And he just really wanted to share his games and share the joy of older pinball, especially electromechanical games from the 60s and 70s. What I really consider a classic pinball era, and the kind of era I think of in my head if someone says, imagine a pinball machine. It's really a game from the 60s or 70s. And really, that started a movement, and people gathering, people having fun, people playing together, and the museum itself was formulated from multiple personal collections that were brought together, then donations afterward. We incorporated as a nonprofit in 2003 and kept growing, and we now have the world's largest collection. We have 100 games in the museum itself, but we have 1,200 more out on the old Naval Air Station in an aircraft maintenance hangar. So we have the world's largest collection. And now we rotate those games back and forth. We make our own exhibits and really just try to continue to bring this, what we consider a very important cultural aspect of American gaming to people, regardless of the era of pinball and regardless of the age of the people that are playing.
I'm going to jump off on something you said, because what is it going to take to get Guinness to recognize you? Because I know right now Rob Burke holds the official record from Guinness at 1,041 machines, but I know you have more. I've been there. I've seen them.
He does. And, it gets a little murky sometimes. His collection is also a mixture of arcade and pinball and how those were counted. The way Guinness works is They don't come out and officiate you. It's you pay for them to come out and certify.
Oh, okay.
And since we're a nonprofit, I didn't feel as director that was the best use of our money just for the bragging rights. People that are familiar with us know the size of our collection. So at a minimum, I say that we have the largest institutional collection of pinball, even though I'm pretty sure it's the largest collection in the world. But there are a lot of barns out in the Midwest and on the East Coast and the West Coast, and kind of like old car collections, you never really know what's going to pop up when someone passes away. There could very well be a 1, 2, 3,000 game collection out there that's a private collection and someone's private property that we don't know about.
Years ago, a lot of people know the story. Pinball was illegal in New York. Was it also illegal in California?
It was. And we're actually working on an exhibit that will harken back to a really special, I can't talk about it too much because it's all in process, but there actually was a court case in the 30s, which predates the really famous court cases from New York. It was considered a gambling device for a very long time in many parts of this country, just very much of it because of association. You would find them in card halls, billiards halls, bars. They were predominantly manufactured in New York State and Chicago, so there was a lot of association with organized crime. And they were very often run through organized crime rings and managed as the games got turned over and as money was collected. So that really attached itself to pinball. And when Mayor LaGuardia was elected in New York City, being the first Italian mayor in New York in the late 30s, he was very conscious of being the first Italian mayor and the association of Italian Americans with the mafia. So he cracked down really hard on all gambling in New York City, and that included seizing pinball machines and then dumping them to the Hudson River for photo ops just to kind of send a point. Then when World War II came along and most manufacturing and materials were converted to war use, it really slowed down production. And when it came back afterward, it was very tightly controlled. So you really didn't see pinball the way we see it now, where it's in arcades or movie theaters or bowling alleys and kind of accessible to families and all ages. You really just saw it in bars, billiards halls, gambling dens, card halls, that kind of thing for a long time. So there was an association with gambling and banning in different municipalities. It was technically illegal in Alameda until the mid 2010s.
Really?
And not enforced, not enforced. But if you did something else wrong and they found pinball games with you, they might have processed an ancillary charge. And when we opened our museum, we actually went to the city of Alameda to get that repealed to make sure we could operate as many games as we wanted to.
Now, it's interesting because you talk about where pinball was previously associated with. And for those in the audience who haven't seen it, there is a movie called The Man Who Saved Pinball about Roger Sharp that talks about that seedy beginnings when he went to New York and came from his native Chicago, and suddenly, why am I playing in an adult bookshop?
Right.
PPM treats pinball as a lot more than a game, a lot more than a piece of American history. What about these aspects of STEM, for example? You guys have a great outreach to schools.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's really fun, and this leans heavy into our mission of play and learn. It's not necessarily tricking people into learning, but it's making it accessible and fun, and you just learn better when you do. Because we focus on STEM, which is really easy with pinball: science, technology, engineering, mechanics, and we actually do STEAM. Really, we include art as well, and there's so much cultural and historical aspect of the machines, especially with their artwork. We have a lot of field trip groups and school groups, private schools, public schools, day camps. Field groups will come to the museum. It's generally associated with a physics lesson or physics class.
Okay.
Sometimes they're making their own pinball machines in the class to demonstrate geometry and physics action. And they'll come to the museum before or after so they can compare their games or get inspiration for the games they're working on. And everybody comes away knowing more about American history. The artwork really tells a story. The engineering and technology behind the games from different eras really tells a story. And especially for the science and physics classes that come through, they come away with a lot from the museum.
You recently have a new exhibit at the museum, Women in Pinball, which features a woman who is a pioneer in the sound design of pinball.
So the exhibit is called Beyond the Backglass, The Women Behind Pinball, and it's the first exhibit of its type anywhere in the world to focus on women's contributions to pinball design, artwork, engineering, and technology. This exhibit really was inspired by a Omni video, which is available on YouTube from 1980, 1979.
Okay.
Suzanne Ciani, who's a brilliant synthesizer electronic musician, very well known. Half the jingles you've heard on television, including things like the Duracell battery and a lot of other really well known jingles, are from her. She was the first female sound designer and voice actor to be invited to work with Bally to produce their game Xenon, spelled with an X, in 1979, and it came out in 1979, 1980. And this Omni video is incredible because we have someone 45 years ago who comes into a male-dominated and kind of white male gaze-oriented industry, and she is being given complete creative control to do all of her voice work and sound and music work as she sees fit for this game, and it's a brilliant game.
Oh, it is.
We have that in the museum now. We have the Omni video playing next to it, so you can refer to it while you're taking a look at the game, and it's just so much fun to play. And really, that single exhibit, which would have been a standalone exhibit, led to the broader idea of, well, we really need to have more games and just do a dedicated Women in Pinball exhibit. And we have some other games as well that are focusing on the artwork, the playfield design, the electromechanical, some of the computer aspects of it. But Xenon was really, really the game that inspired all that. And it'd be years before another woman was given that much control over a game that was being worked on.
If it wasn't for Xenon, I would be driving a better car. My friend Dave and I put so many quarters into that thing in high school. It was painful.
And she was wonderful. We were able to reach out to her and interview her about the work on this game. She lives locally. She lives on the coast of Northern California. She wonderfully met with us via Zoom for about 90 minutes, and we were able to talk to her. Just really wonderful, remembered everything about working on the game, which was great, and really gave us some insight to the design work and programming of the chips. All of this being done with early Moog synthesizers and kind of an Apple II or Commodore equivalent computer. Really, really, really fascinating stuff. So we really appreciated that.
And I only recently learned that there is another famous woman who is a voice in one of the machines in the museum. I never realized that Tina Fey is in Medieval Madness.
So Medieval Madness, which we had a San Francisco Chronicle article about a year ago naming it as the greatest pinball game ever made, which is really fun. That's a wonderful old news technique to generate discussion about something, which is to name something the best.
Clickbait before there was clickbait, right?
And it works. And it works. That game is really fun. It's fun for both a novice player, it's fun for a seasoned player, and she does have, I think, 4 or 5 different voice components to that. I think it was before she was on Saturday Night Live when she was with Second City.
Okay.
And she did some of the voice work, and you could absolutely tell it's her. Once you know that some of the voice acting is her, I think one of them is, it's totally medieval.
Yes,
and it's a fantastic game to play. It's fun for everybody. We're so happy to have that in our modern wing, because that is one of the things we do with the museum is to make sure these games stay available to the public, and that is a sought after game now. It's a valuable game, and it's the kind of game where if someone gets their hands on it, it generally disappears into a private collection now. It is no longer playable for the public, so it's important to us to make sure that that stays available and playable and enjoyable by everybody.
I always, when people ask me about fascination with pinball, talking about the history, talking about the science aspects of it, they're like, well, really, Scott, what's the big deal? And I always like to tell them that pinball, along with comic books, animation, and Cajun cuisine, pinball is one of the few truly American inventions. We didn't borrow it from anywhere else.
It descends from a French game, but it really turns into something purely American in the early 1900s. It originates in France at Chateau Bagatelle in the mid 1700s. They wanted to have a game they could play when it was raining outside and they couldn't play croquet. So what can you do indoors? They came up with Bagatelle, and it was played in a fashion that we wouldn't necessarily recognize today. It was a large felted table, kind of like a pool table, raked back at a 15 or 20 degree angle, and you'd hit a cue ball with a cue stick, and the ball would go up to the top. It'd bounce around into different pockets worth different amounts. Maybe it'd hit a little bell for extra points. And you had kind of the great-great-grandfather of pinball. In the 1860s, you saw it shrink down to something that could fit on a table that we would kind of see as an ancestor of pinball when Charles Redgrave, an English gentleman, patented the shooting plunger, which allowed the game to shrink and use marbles. And that's actually where pinball gets its name, because pins were used to direct the ball and capture the ball for different scores. So that definitely looks like pinball in the 1860s, but in the early 1900s, when you see people start putting glass over the games, you see it get more complicated, larger, heavier. You see people put coin operation on the front in the 20s and 30s, and you have whole kind of arcades that you have dozens of these games, and then it really, really looks like pinball. And it's taken off, and it's something purely American, very unique. It's a huge pastime after work, on weekends for lots of working folks. Really, with Ballyhoo in the mid-30s, which added a whole bunch of bright color to the wooden playfield. After that, in terms of graphic arts, it really takes off. And culturally, you can see what era by what the artwork and colors are and the design work are on the games after that. It is very uniquely American after that point.
I have an odd connection to pinball history, and then if you remember the game show, The Weakest Link, at the time that show was airing, I was the host for the Pinball Rules Archive. It had lost its online home. I had storage space. I took it over for about a year and a half or so. But at the time that happened, one of the producers from Weakest Link emailed me because they said, we have a question coming up about what mechanism invented by Harry Williams helped people to stop cheating at pinball. It was paraphrasing here. And they said, tilt mechanism. And I said, well, that's fine, but you'll also have to accept stool pigeon as an answer. I never saw the episode. I don't have. So my little tiny contribution to the history.
We have a whole exhibit dedicated to that in the museum, which is really fun. So because these were used for gambling in bars and billiards halls and saloons, of course, people are going to try to cheat. And it's very easy to cheat when you're playing with a marble and open play field. You wait for the barkeep who you got the marbles from to play the game to turn his back on you, and you put all your balls in the highest scoring corner and you say, look, I won my free drink or I won my cigar, and you can't tell. So they put glass over the top of the game. Now you can't reach in there, but you can still tilt the thing and move everything into a corner. So make them big and heavy. They put them on legs. Now, what if you have 30 of these games in a room? The poor bartender can't collect money from everybody all the time, so that's when you put a coin-op mechanism on the front. But people are still shaking the games to control the direction of the ball, because you don't have flippers until 1947 with Humpty Dumpty, which we have in the museum and is playable, which is amazing. Most people have never played a Humpty Dumpty. So you invent these different tilt mechanisms, and the stool pigeon one that you mentioned, which is really fun. We have a couple examples in our static exhibit section of the museum with stool pigeons, is really just a ball sitting on a column. And if you move the game too much, if you're nudging it to try to control the direction of the ball, that little ball will roll off the column and it ends your game. The more recognized tilt mechanism with the little kind of plumb bomb, the metal weight hanging on a metal wire that touches an electrical contact on the outside of a ring and then tilts out the game or the ball that you're playing, really came about in the late 30s and is still used in games now from the 2020s. And we have a whole exhibit in the museum that covers these.
When did you come on board to PPM?
In 2019, I had just decided to leave a job in the South Bay, and I really wanted to work with a nonprofit. And I was looking at a lot of environmental nonprofits because that's important to me, but the Pacific Pinball Museum was 3 blocks from where I lived. here in Alameda, and I signed on in 2019 as the marketing manager. Stayed on through the pandemic shutdown, came back as the marketing manager, and then I've been executive director for the last year and a half or so. It's just such a great organization with a great mission. It's been fantastic to work with everybody.
Last week, I asked Michael Thanos from Forbidden Island about pandemics. I'm going to do the same for you. How did you get through? Because I remember being on the East Coast at the time, because I'd been out to visit. I was familiar with Pacific Pinball. And I saw that picture from first day of shutdown. And it actually was one of the most moving pictures to me because it was such a happy, bright place. And here it is, dark, nobody in there. How did you get through, and how long were you shut down?
It was pretty dystopic. So we actually closed 2 days before the official shutdown as well. I was talking with the then executive director, Darcy Bruno, on a Sunday evening, and we were talking about everything we were reading in the news and looking at what's happening around the world. And we decided to close 2 days before the official order came down just because we felt that was the right thing to do. We were closed for 15 months, which was painful because most nonprofit organizations, museums, institutions, they really want to try to operate on a 50% patron admission and 50% grants and donations setup. We're more like 75-80% patron admission, 20% donations, grants, etc. So that was difficult. That was very painful. We've always run a tight belt, and we had a bit of emergency fund, and we were able to qualify for an SBA loan during shutdown, which really helped.
Let's talk a little bit about the experience of going to the museum, because people may think, oh, I've got to bring a pocket full of quarters. How does it work when one comes to see you?
We have 4 games that are still quarter or dollar bill play at the very front of the museum that are good for people that just need to scratch an itch, or they want to hit and run the museum while walking by or waiting for the bus. They're new games. They're fun. The rest of the museum, the balance of the collection of 103 games, are all set to free play, meaning you don't put any quarters in the games. You don't need to bring money. You don't have to crack open the laundromat change machine to come to the museum. What you do is you pay a single admission fee and you get a wristband, and that lets you come in and out for the entire day from when we open at 11 o'clock in the morning until we close at 9 o'clock at night. Even later on Fridays and Saturdays, we're open until 10 p.m. And you're able to come in and out as much as you like for local businesses. You can go to the other boutiques, get food locally, come back. And really, that lets you have a relaxed experience. You're not worried about losing the quarter or quarters that you've just put into a game. You really have to play each game at least 3 times to figure it out, because every game is different. Every manufacturer is different. All the tilts have different sensitivities. You kind of have different goals in every game. The first time you play it, it really rocks you. It just kicks your butt. The second time you play a game, that same game, you kind of know what you're supposed to be doing. The third or fourth time you play it, you actually put up a good score. And when you're not worried about losing money, you're much more likely to play a game you wouldn't normally put quarters into. We have younger people who would only stay in our modern room and play games from the 90s forward that might play a game from the 40s and 50s because they're not wasting money on it. And they figure out they like that game. And now they're telling their friends, let's come play these games from the 50s and 60s instead, because they're different, they're novel, and you're not wasting money on it. So you tried it, you experimented with it.
You're still running the 2 for Tuesday deal?
We are. So every Tuesday is our discounted day. 2 people get in for $22. It's essentially half price, bring a friend. Singles are $12, so it's a little bit cheaper if you come in as a single. But what we're really trying to do is encourage people to bring a friend, family member, coworker, someone who's never been to the museum. And that's a great day to come in because that's also the day after our Fix-It night, which happens Monday nights. The only day the museum is closed is every Monday. It takes a team of volunteers, 8 to 12 volunteers every Monday night, about 5 hours to work on all the games that have gone down or had a little problem pop up during the week. So Tuesday is not only a discount day, but it's the day that everything is fixed and everything is working.
And this, which makes Tuesday in Alameda maybe the cheapest entertainment day in the Bay Area, because you can go to the Pinball Museum with 2 people for $22. You can take a break and go catch a movie for $5. Come back, play some more pinball. I mean, Tuesday in Alameda, one of the great best kept secrets. What keeps you coming back?
I think it's our mission. And when we have people who have never played, whether it's a young kid, a teenager, someone in their 20s at this point, or someone in their 70s or 80s. We also have groups of elderly people come to the museum from different facilities. People come to the museum to have a good time. They have a good time. They leave having had a good time. And that's really, really hard to beat. It's fantastic.
Is there a typical person who walks in the door?
It's shifted a little bit since the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, I would say we were weighed really heavily towards folks in their early 60s and up, although we still had all age ranges. Post-pandemic reopening, we've really leaned heavier towards families, Gen Xers, younger people. We've always entertained a lot of schools and summer camps and field trips, but that seems to have increased as well. And that is really important to me, that we keep introducing young people, people under the age of 15 to pinball, just because so many haven't played it. And in order to keep it alive and make sure people are interested in it for the future, we have to definitely induct younger generations.
People have tried to put the final nail in pinball's coffin multiple times in our lives. Right now, I would argue we're in something of a revival. What makes that revival happen?
I think a lot of it has to do with Gen X buying power hitting a stride.
Okay.
People that played these games in the 70s and 80s and 90s in arcades, bowling alleys, movie theaters, have the money and the time to enjoy the things from their youth. And pinball was one of those things.
So what is Evan's era of pinball? Where's Evan's sweet spot in the history of the game?
You know, it's really, from my experience growing up, playing at Aladdin's Castle in Mountain View, bike riding over there after school on my BMX bike with $5 to get some sliders from Burger King and then play for a little bit and hope one of my friends might show up because we didn't have cell phones. It was a good time. But I remember games like 8-Ball Deluxe, Black Knight, up to Addams Family and Funhouse, some of those games in the very early 90s as well, before that arcade closed. So really, it's the 80s and early 90s games that's in our modern room at the museum that really, I remember those, and that's really fond for me.
One last question. So someone's listening, they're intrigued, they've never been. What's your elevator pitch? You should come here because...
You should really come to the Pacific Pinball Museum because we have probably the best condition collection of games you're going to run into. Other places might have more games, might have games from a specific era, but in terms of a breadth of collection from the 40s to the 2020s that you can play that are in good condition. They're working the way they should. They've been kept in their original condition. They work the way as they were originally produced, whether it was in the 40s or in the 2020s. I think that our collection, and just because you're paying that single fee, so you're not worried about losing money with a game, you're going to try games you've never tried before and find out you like every era of pinball. And I think that's really exciting.
Evan Phillippe, Executive Director of the Pacific Pinball Museum on Webster Street in Alameda. Thanks for spending time with us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks again to Evan Phillippe, the Executive Director of the Pacific Pinball Museum, located at 1510 Webster Street in Alameda. You can find them online at pacificpinball.org. They're open every day of the week except Monday. They are closed on 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day. With your indulgence, I'd like to take a personal moment to dedicate this episode to Dave Langdon. Dave and I grew up together in New Hampshire, started in radio together, and played a whole lot of pinball. He passed away in August, but I know wherever he is, he got a chance to hear the show. Dave, this one's for you. Thanks to Rachel Lee and the California Historical Radio Society for providing a location for this week's discussion with Evan Phillippe. Next week on the Alameda Connection, I'll be talking with Jeremy Andehusen, the founder and president of Alameda Pride. Now in its 4th year, Alameda Pride is getting ready for Pride in the Park and many other events on Saturday, October 11th, which coincides with National Coming Out Day. I'll talk to Jeremy about what led to the foundation of Alameda Pride and also the formation of QTAC, the Queer Teen Alameda Center, a safe space drop-in facility for Alameda's LGBTQ youth population. As always, our theme music is provided courtesy of jazz guitarist Bill Hart. The song is called Beachside Isle, and it comes from his album, Watch the Sky. I'm Scott Piehler. I hope you'll join me next Sunday morning at 8 a.m. on KCSM HD2 for the Alameda Connection.